Hello and welcome to the sewing studio. Today I'm going to show you how to make a log cabin quilt, and you can make this using a jelly roll or you can make it using scraps. So the quilt behind me has been made with some leftover jelly roll strips, and then I've added some other fabric into it. And I'm going to show you the easiest way of keeping organised with this block. Because a log cabin is made up of a series of lights and dark fabric, it's really important that you're methodical with how you sew it together. So I'm going to show the easiest way of doing that. So you are going to need to take down some measurements for this. So I would suggest that you get yourself a pen and paper, because I'm going to be giving you quite a lot of measurements. And then I'm going to show you how to get organised. But before I do that, if you like what we do, don't forget to like and subscribe. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok. You can meet the team, you can see behind the scenes, and you can also see our customer makes. And we'll answer all of your questions in the comments below. So let's get started. So the first thing you're going to need is the centre for your log cabin. And historically, this was always a red piece because it symbolised the fire, and then the other pieces are your logs around it. So today I've chosen this sort of burgundy dark colour for the centre, just because it goes with the other fabrics. And that is a 2.5 inch square. So to make the quilt behind me, I've got 12 blocks, and that quilt measures 44 by 58 inches. So lots of measurements to remember, but the easiest way to do this is to stack them, and you can see that I have labelled mine. So I've got a 2.5 inch square for my centre. I've then got a 2.5 inch in my light fabric. I've got a stack of 4.5 in my lights. I've also got a stack of 6.5 in my lights, 8.5, so we're still on our light pile here, 10.5, and our 12.5. And then I'm going to line up my dark fabrics. So I've got a stack of 4.5. I've got a stack of 6.5. Just need to find where my bit of paper's gone. There we are. I've got a stack of 8.5, and I find it easier to label them. It helps when I'm sewing, it helps me to be a bit quicker. So 10.5, 12.5, and finally 14.5. And what you're going to do is you're going to start, so if I put this under this camera, you're going to start with your centre, and then you're going to work in a clockwise direction, and you're going to add 2 light logs. So to your dark, you're going to add a 2.5 light and then a 4.5 light. And then we're going to pick up the darks, and we're going to do a 4.5 dark and a 6.5, and we're going to work round in a clockwise direction. So I'm actually just going to go through and pick them up. So I've got a stack next to the sewing machine. So I'm going to pick them up and stack them in the order that I've just said. And this way, I'm so much quicker with my sewing, and I remember the order they're going in. So if you think about this, you're doing 2 lights, 2 darks, 2 lights, 2 darks. So that's the order that I'm going to sew them in. So I'm now going to sit at the sewing machine, and I'm going to work round in a clockwise direction until I've created this block. So I'm just going to put my labels back on so that I don't get muddled up when I get up in a moment. Now, ordinarily, when I sew them, I would press them back and I'd go to the iron. But for the purposes of today, I'm going to sew them and just finger press them so that we can create the block. So like I said, I start with my centre and I'm working clockwise. So I've got my dark centre and then I've got one of the light fabrics. And it's 1/4 of an inch seam throughout. So I press that back, and like I say, we're working in a clockwise direction. So then I put my next light one on at the bottom. And this is why I do it in this order, because it's so easy to get it wrong, and then you don't form that pattern. You can do this with any size strips. It doesn't have to be 2.5. So you can see we've done our 2 lights and now we're going to do 2 darks. We're going to do 1 there and 1 there and so on round. And now I'm going to finish with the 2 darks, and that's the end of the block when you put the last 2 darks on. So I'm just going over to the iron to give that a press. So you can see, I'll just move these out of the way a minute. So you can see how the block has been created. So we started with our centre, 2 lights, 2 darks, 2 lights, 2 darks, 2 lights, 2 darks to build up the block. So with this one that I've already done here, when you've made all of your blocks, you would join it so that you've got your lights going together, and it creates an illusion. If you've got blocks where you've got a very definite dark and light, you can create all sorts of patterns with them using the dark and light. So you could, for example, do a 4 patch of darks there, or you could stagger them so that you've got your lights coming down diagonally and your darks coming down diagonally. So you can just have a play around with your colour. But that's how you create the log cabin block. And I just think it's a really quick and easy way of doing it if you have all of your strips ready to go as you sit at the machine. Now, ideally, I would have given it a good press in between each one, but as you can see, it's worked out okay by just giving it a finger press and then pressing at the end. So I'm just going to go over to the quilt behind me now, and we're just going to talk about how that's been put together. So on this quilt, I've used up odd jelly roll strips that I had, and I've also used other fabrics and a bit of batik and really just made it up out of scraps. So with this one, it hasn't got the definite lights and darks like the one that I demonstrated to you. So I've just placed them quite randomly, but I think it works. And I've echoed this centre here that is the centre of the log cabin, which I've done in a turquoise batik. And I've echoed that with a little border in the same fabric. So these blocks measure 14.5 inches square. And this one is great for a single bed, this size quilt. And with this one, I'm probably just going to do a fancy decorative stitch in the ditch. But if you've got any other ideas, we'd love to hear about them in the comments below. So this is a top and it does need finishing off and quilting, so please let us know your ideas. So have a go at a log cabin. It's great fun quilt to do. It's really versatile, and if you use definite darks and lights, you can create other patterns within your quilt. The beauty of a log cabin is you can do any width. So these are 2.5 inches wide, but you could go down to 1 inch wide, 1.5 inches. It's a really versatile, fun quilt to do, but the best thing is to be organised at the beginning with your lights and darks and work in a clockwise direction. So as always, have fun, and I look forward to seeing you next time here in the sewing studio.